I posted your information on the website, but I forgot to send the email. Apologize for that. So anyway, I sent it at the last minute, and here you are. So I'll wait a couple of minutes for people to log on. I guess they're still getting the email, and we will get move forward. Good morning, Christian. So today we are going to be discussing leadership. But before we do that, is there anyone here who had attended the career fair who uh, wants to talk about what happened? Also, if you weren't on that list I sent around and you did attend, please let me know. Please send me an email. I'll correct it. So, is there anyone who attended the career fair and wants to talk about it for a minute? No one? Okay. Uh, all right. Maybe later someone will. So I'll hold off on the attendance because people are still trickling in, and that was my screw up. All right. Let's get started then.
Morning, Professor.
Good morning,
Um,
Brandon. How
yeah,
are
I just want to let you know that you did send a link for April 3rd. It
I
was
did.
yeah, but apparently I guess you created a new one, so that's the one everybody's logging into. But
Oh,
you sent one before, just so you know.
it was a different one. I didn't create a new one. I used the same. I sent the wrong one.
Well, I guess it's the same one then, because you sent one before, and that's the one that I sent in the group chat to people, but for some reason I guess you wasn't accepting, like you didn't let people in yet. But
No,
anyways, I was
no.
just saying that I
Yeah,
did got
there
an
was no one
email from you.
here. There was no
Yeah.
one here. Something was wrong. I don't know. So I did send a link around, and you used the first one.
Yes, that's the one that I used. But
So I'm not sure what happened. Then it wasn't me. It was a technical problem. I don't know
yeah.
what it
But
was.
look, you got like 21 participants in the group, so
So something's right, but not. I didn't get the normal is more like 31. So it's not quite what it. I'm not sure what occurred then. I was looking. I thought I might have forgotten to send the email. It's on the Blackboard, and I also just used the same thing. So I'm not sure why it didn't go through. But all right, then it wasn't me. I don't know exactly. But in any case, not important. So let's get started, and I'll give it a little more time. Today we're going to talk about leadership, and basically, I think leadership is changing in some ways because people are changing. And I think people are changing because technology is altering the way people interact. Uh, and so in the past, people, I think, leaders, I mean, had to deal with complicated organizations that were unwieldy and required a great deal of coordination. And for better or worse, that approach to production was replaced by um, more flexible units that contract with each other to a greater degree. And that was in turn facilitated by technology. And the trend has been for technology to become more and more complicated. And so um, the technology in turn affects people. And so if you look at history, there was a guy in the 50s, 1950s, who wrote a book called The Lonely Crowd, David Reisman, and he claimed that American society had gone through three phases. The first he called tradition directed, which meant that people copied or did stuff in accordance with past tradition. So like tribes and primitive people do things according to rituals that have been developed, and religion is traditional and things like that. And so people followed the tradition. And then with the industrial era, there was more weight put on entrepreneurship, and so people became more individualistic. Also, with the Enlightenment, uh, people uh, asserted themselves and claimed individual rights. So you had Locke writing about individual rights. And so people became in the 19th century more inner directed, he said. Uh, so, like, people focused on creating a business and then following their vision for the business. But as these businesses succeeded, what then happened was that more and more people became employees working in large corporations, and they became more concerned with how other people thought of them. And so he said that the world, and also things like fashion and media, became more widespread and accessible. And so people became more concerned with cues from their peers and cues from other people. And basically, he called that the transition to other directedness. So he said that there were three phases: inner of tradition directed, inner directed, and other directed. And then the fourth phase is now, I think. Reisman died a few years ago, so he didn't have a chance to update the group. He actually didn't continue that line of research, but his book was he was most famous for that book, which he wrote early in life. He actually did other kinds of research for most of his life. But I think now we're transitioning to a fourth kind of social interrelationship that you might call techno-directed. And basically, I think technology increasingly drives people's concerns. And we saw that with the social dilemma. And I think because people are different in the way they interact, the nature of leadership has to change. And so we're looking at different kinds of leadership. So if you define leadership as the ability to influence a group toward the achievement of a vision or a set of goals, um, what leaders need to do is tap into what people think, how people think, and what motivates them. And so basically, leaders uh, have to be concerned about the nature of their employees. And leadership is not the same thing as management. Management means that you operate a system that exists. You move up in a hierarchy, and you achieve promotion. Leadership means that you have a vision, that you change things and goals that you achieve. Um, Very often, leadership that's not part of a system can be highly important. You see this, for example, in revolutions in society. Like Mahatma Gandhi in India led to, he led a huge movement that created independence for Pakistan and India and Bangladesh. And this huge movement came from his vision and his charisma. And nobody said that uh, you have the right to be the leader. It was, he just created it through his own wherewithal, through his own charisma and skill and vision and articulation of ideas. And this drew people to him. And the same is true of many great leaders, or notorious leaders for that matter. It could be Hitler or Stalin, it could be Lenin, it could be George Washington, it could be Martin Luther King. There are a lot of ways that this can play out. So it's often not the case. And when Max Weber, the sociologist who coined the term charisma, talked about alternative sources of authority, he saw corporate executives as being primarily transactional in nature, primarily bureaucrats. And he was thinking of charismatic leadership more in the form of religion and the form of new ways of believing, and not so much that this would play a role in business settings. But in fact, it plays a role in business settings and government and political settings, and religious settings, and pretty much anywhere where there's a need for leadership. So basically, you could argue that traits, what if you want to say what makes a leader, what makes Martin Luther King or Mahatma Gandhi or George Washington, what makes these people leaders? You could say, well, one part is the situation. Like, would Mahatma Gandhi been a great leader in today's India? Or would George Washington have been electable as president now? And my guess is no, to both. So basically, traits are also reflective of situational factors. So if you're going to arrive at traits, you have to keep in mind that any study you do is characteristic of the present and probably not characteristic of all time. If you brought Octavian, Augustus, Emperor Augustus into today's world, I don't think he would end up playing a major role. Maybe he would. He was very brilliant, so maybe that he'd figure it out. But it would take a lot to change, the patterns that you have in one era to the patterns of another era. And of course, we learn from different eras. The claim that, oh, you can't learn from the past because they had slavery or they did this or that or they killed people or whatever. That's that's stupid. I'm sad to say that universities have adopted a lot of this nonsense. Of course, you can learn from other eras and other people, and a big part of why the U.S. government was so successfully framed by Madison and his associates, Hamilton and the others, is that they had studied the Greeks and the Romans. So, in other words, but they knew that they couldn't just do the same thing; it had to be updated. But basically, they took lessons from them and said, "How do we overcome the problems?" One of which we're experiencing today is factionalism. that different groups are at each other's throats. But of course, you can learn from the past, and there are evils in every age, including ours. In fact, the evils in our age may be just as bad as they were in the time of Madison. If you say you won't pay attention to Madison because there was evil in his time, then why should anyone pay attention to you? Because there's equal evil in your time, or to any of your professors, because they're they're living with lots of evil as well. So, saying that you can't learn from another time because there was evil in that time is moronic. It really is, in my opinion. So anyway, I'm saying this because I've had students say stuff like that to me. I'm addressing your predecessors. So basically, trait theories of leadership, though, try to identify certain traits that are characteristic of all leaders. And these include certain big five traits. Remember, the big five traits are extroversion, um, neuroticism, extroversion, openness, agreeability, and conscientiousness. And of those, extroverts, people who are conscientious, and people who have openness are more likely to be leaders. So openness means that you like new experiences, you like to try out new things. Um, Boldness and assertiveness are also associated with leadership. So people who have a lot of self-confidence, who assert themselves, who are extroverts, and who are proactive. Proactivity is a characteristic of a leadership trait. Your book talks about leaders having mid-range scores on the dark triad traits. Um, are other people having trouble hearing me? Can you hear me okay?
You're fine, Professor. Good
Okay, all
evening,
right.
brother.
Somebody said they couldn't hear me, so I just wanted to make sure it wasn't me. So
There's some people who saying they're still waiting to get in.
um, they do. I see one person, uh, but I do not see more than I don't see anyone right now. I'm sorry. Who
Okay,
was
so it might just be that one person.
okay? So they just came up, and I saw them. So um, getting back to uh, I was talking about the dark triad traits. The dark triad traits, if you recall from our discussion of personality, are psychopathy, Machiavellianism, and narcissism. And your book says that these are associated with effective leadership if they're mid-range scores. And I would say I don't know how meaningful that is. Sometimes these empirical researchers get led by their own statistical measures and don't really say things that have much meaning. So, I mean, if you have a mid-range score on a test of psychopathy, what does that really mean? I'm not sure. I don't think it has much meaning. You're either psychopath or you're not. And a psychopath is somebody who does things without conscience and has antisocial personality characteristics and will commit crimes and do evil things without feeling guilty about it. And it doesn't have to be everything. It can be in one area. So they might be like thieves, or they might be confidence artists, con artists, or they might be murderers. So that, who knows? But it doesn't have to be across the board. It can be also. So you can also get people who are empathetic in some areas, but conscienceless in other areas. So, I was talking to the other class about Tony Soprano, and Tony Soprano in the fictional character, it obviously uh, was a psychopath and was a murderer, but at the same time felt a lot of empathy for animals. And in one episode, he kills a guy because he killed an animal. And basically, people do have these complicated traits, So these complicated mixtures of traits, but saying that someone has a mid-range score in psychopathy is not really, to my mind, really addressing the issue of psychopathy. And the reason is you're only a it only matters if you do something that's really evil. And it could be that part of the reason they find that is that people who are emotionally intelligent frequently also become leaders. And empathy is characteristic of a lot of leaders, which seems to contradict the idea that they have the dark triad traits. But basically, let's say you're a psychopath, and I have no doubt that many leaders are. At the same time, you might have emotional intelligence, and so you realize not to go too far because you'll get caught. So, you know, Lawrence Kohlberg had these stages of moral maturity. And it could well be that a lot of politicians, I would say quite a few of them, actually, I would say a majority, you know, if you look at the presidential candidates of the last few years, I would say pretty much all of them are psychopaths. Trump, Biden, Clinton, they're all psychopaths, the whole crew. And so basically, then you might say, well, why is it that the public is drawn to psychopaths? And that's an interesting question in itself, one that I don't have the answer to. Hayek writes about this in The Road to Serfdom. He has a chapter, Why the Worst Get to the Top. And of course, a lot of it is that they're good at getting to the top. You know, that when you have concentrated power, that's who's going to be drawn to power. But why people keep falling for it throughout history and keep favoring systems that engender mass murder, that I don't know. I'm not sure of the reason for it, but it is a historical pattern. It's not a historical necessity. And, you know, saying that, you're going against the tide of history because history says that we must always have socialist systems that create mass murder. I don't think that's like a fantasy created by people who are, you know, part of the problem that you're trying to explain, which is why people think this way. And I don't claim to have an answer for it. But in any case, what you frequently have is that emotional intelligence contributes to your ability to become a leader. And so if you know how to gauge your audience, and you know where to cut off your psychopathy, you know, so somebody like Lyndon Johnson starts out as a congressman with no assets and it retires with a net worth today of like, today it was in those days 20 million, today it'd be like 200 million. How does someone succeed in being reelected given the rampant criminality? People don't care, you know. Why that is, I don't know, but I think a lot of it is that they're smart, they're capable of moderating their behaviors. So they have mid-range scores on psychopathy, leaders, and Machiavellianism and narcissism. And most leaders do, according to this. Um, Traits will do a better job of predicting who will be a leader than of predicting whether a leader will be a very good leader. Okay, so it's much harder to predict. And I think a lot of whether a leader is good or not is, again, the interaction of the leader with the circumstances. And leaders who are chosen, who fit the times they're in, are going to be really good. You know, there's like that, you know, like Winston Churchill was a dismal military leader. He was really terrible, and he caused great losses in World War One. He was really inept, and he was also, I think, a vicious guy who mistreated colonies, the British colonies, and killed a lot of people. But in World War II, it was the right personality, and he became known as a great leader because he fit World War II well. After Gallipoli, which he caused immense British losses against the Ottoman Empire, against Turkey, and he totally lost credibility for like 2 decades. And it was only later that he rose to prominence. I think that may be true in many instances, that if times change, the person who couldn't be accepted in one period becomes accepted in another period, and they become effective because they fit the new period. So basically, rather than traits, I think it's probably the interaction of the trait and the situation. Now, behavioral theories of leadership are, rather than focusing on characteristics of people, focus on behaviors that differentiate different kinds of leaders. And the idea is that you can learn the behaviors. So you can learn to change. Now, the first one to talk about contingency theory, Fred Fiedler, didn't really agree with that, what I just said. So Fiedler argued that you're either one way or another way, and you don't really change to fit the situation. So what needs to happen is that, well, the first thing I said, that you need to have the right leader in the right situation. But other people who argue in favor of competency models argue that you can learn behaviors. I don't think, I think it's probably a combination of the truth. You need to be a really great leader, you need certain traits, and anyone can be a good leader and learn how to lead in many situations. So I think it's a combination of things. So basically, there are two, I'm using the whiteboard now, there are two basic traits that many of the leadership theories have looked at. One is initiating structure, which is also known as task orientation. And the other is consideration or relations orientation. Okay, so task orientation means that you focus on the task. It's what it sounds like. Whereas consideration or relations orientation means that in addition, you look at the concerns that your employees have. You worry about their feelings. You worry about developing them. And okay, so here's Raquel. So basically, the idea of initiating structure is that the leader defines and structures people's roles and their own roles and aims at goal attainment. It includes behavior that attempts to organize work relationships, and goals. And initiating structure involves setting standards and emphasizing deadlines. In contrast, consideration refers to a leader who works to establish relationships characterized by mutual trust, respect for employees' ideas, and regard for employees' feelings. How considerate is the leader? So consideration is what it sounds like. And so basically, let's think about 12 o'clock high, which I think I assigned to you already, and you're going to do a discussion board on it later. And in that movie, there are two leaders that lead the 918th unit, the 918th unit. One is Colonel Davenport, and the other is General Savage. In the case of Colonel Davenport, he is a relations-oriented leader. He focuses on consideration. Savage uses the phrase over-identification with his men, that he has strong relationships, they trust each other, they like each other, he regards their feelings, he's considerate, he cares about them, he fights for them, and so on. In contrast, Savage focuses on the task. He defines the structure, he changes roommates, he reappoints the air exec, he defines the roles, he focuses on goals, reducing deaths. He tries to organize things better, he focuses on assigning tasks, he sets standards. So he does a lot of the stuff. So you've got these two leaders who almost perfectly fit this distinction. Now, why is Savage somewhat more successful and Davenport less successful? And Fiedler's answer is that task-oriented leaders are appropriate when the situation is very difficult or very easy, whereas relations-oriented leaders are appropriate when the situation is in the middle. So I can put this on the screen on the whiteboard. So let's say you have, let me do this, draw. So you have difficulty of the situation. Here, I'll use this for that. Difficulty of the situation, and you have on the x-axis relations orientation. Oh, I did it backwards again. I did it last time too. I keep getting mixed up. So basically here you have relations orientation. Not difficulty. Well, let me redo it. So let's start again. So on the y-axis, you have relations orientation. And on the x-axis, you have task difficulty. And the idea is that it peaks, the amount of relations orientation peaks when you're at the middle level of task difficulty. So if the task is easy, if the task is easy or the task is hard, because you're at the lowest end of task difficulty or the highest end, you have relatively low relations orientation. Whereas if the task is in the middle, then you have the most relations orientation. You need the most relations orientation. So the question then is, what makes a task easy and what makes a task difficult? And Fiedler says there are three issues that will make the leader's task difficult or easy. Number one is the task itself clear? So in other words, how hard is the task? Is it easy? Is it hard? If it's very easy, then obviously it's easy to get people to do it. If it's very hard, then it's hard. Second of all, leader-member relations. If the leader and the follower don't get along, then the leader's situation is more difficult. And third of all, if the leader has power. Now, if you look at what faced Savage and Davenport, uh, Davenport had a slight advantage because the leader-member relations were good. But in both his case and in Savage's case, they had an extremely difficult task. And so the task clarity was missing, and the leader had only limited power. The reason is that they didn't exactly know how to do it. And so they had a very, very difficult task, and they had some power, but not a huge amount. And so when Savage took over, he had the same problem with task clarity, which is why Davenport's approach didn't work, but also had the added problem that they were stressed by the change, and they didn't like him, and he was a hard iron-tailed is the expression, and he didn't have enough power, and they tried to subvert his power by filing a complaint with the inspector general. So basically, Savage faced the perfect definition of a difficult situation. Now, what Fiedler says is that when the task is difficult or easy, then you should be task-oriented. But when the task is mid-range, as it is in most business settings, then you should be relations orientated. All right, now one more point about Fiedler is that what he argued is that when if you want to know whether you are task oriented or relations oriented, the thing to do is to ask yourself who your least preferred coworker is. Okay, he calls it the least preferred coworker scale. If you can identify the person you work with that you like the least, you then ask yourself, do I like this person or don't I like this person? If I don't like this person, then I'm task oriented. I'm not relations oriented. If you like everybody, then you're relations oriented. All right. If you're good at relations, then you're going to do well in the mid-range settings, which is most settings. If you're task oriented, then you need to flourish. You need to be in difficult settings or easy settings. Now, not everybody agrees that the nature of the leader is defined in advance. Fiedler argued that you're one way or the other, but I would say a lot of people, if not most people, think you can learn these skills at least to a degree. You know, it's just like math. We're not going to be, the average person isn't going to be Albert Einstein or Gauss or some such person. You know, you can't be taught to be Bill Gates or Mahatma Gandhi or somebody like that. You can't. There's too many other questions, but you can learn to be a decent leader. Okay, so I don't think you can learn math to be competent, but you can't learn math to be a genius. And the same thing with leadership. And so basically, one thing that you could try to do is identify situations where leadership can be improved. All right, so that's kind of like a behavior theory of leadership. One idea that Hersey and Blanchard advocate is called situational leadership. And situational leadership is a contingency theory that suggests that the appropriate leadership style depends on the followers. How ready are the followers to accomplish a task? And they argue that there are 4 levels of followers, and you should fashion your leadership style to the levels that your followers are at. And so the 4 levels are, first of all, directing with, well, let me put it this way, that let's say the followers are competent, but they're not, are not competent and not willing. Let's say your followers are not competent and not willing. So you've got new people basically that aren't highly motivated. Then you want to direct them or tell them how to do the job. So you want to train them and you want to supervise them so that they do the job. Okay. Let's say your followers are competent but not committed yet. So then you want to sell them on becoming more committed. If followers are competent but variably committed, then you want to be participating and supporting. You want to encourage them to gain more commitment. And finally, if the followers are both committed and competent, then you want to delegate. So basically the question is, which level are your employees at? So if you look at 12 o'clock high, I think the crew, the 918th crew is competent. I mean, they needed a little help, they needed a little practice, but basically they knew how to do it. The thing is, they weren't that committed. Okay. And so I think Savage overall has to sell the unit. And the way he does that is by focusing on the task and then getting them to succeed. And that's a form of selling. Okay. He wants to convince them that they can do the job. And he discusses that in the course of the story. Now, in contrast, think of an example. In the case, oh, I know, there's another movie or play actually called Henry V by William Shakespeare. Okay, and in that story, Henry V, it's the third part of a trilogy, and the story is that it starts out that Henry IV is a young, that Henry V is a young boy in when his father is king, and he falls in with a bad crowd led by this guy Falstaff, and they run riot and do all kinds of stuff, and he's a juvenile delinquent, and then he has to learn leadership, and then in Henry V, which is the end of this series, he finally assumes king, and he shows that he can be a great leader. And one of the things he does early in the movie is he executes some of his friends for stealing. That rather than favor his friends, he executes them legally. I mean, for stealing, he has to judge them and doesn't care that they're his friends. And this is like saying, oh, he's become a true leader. And the story is that he's tricked by his some of the religious leaders in England to invade France. They tell him that we want you to invade France. They're hoping to get rid of him, and he invades France, and France has a more powerful army, and they're able they're able to delay the battle, and it exhausts Henry V, and they're marching through the rain and everything, and they're vastly outnumbered. And he then gets the idea to look around the camp and see who's on his side and who isn't. Is everybody demotivated? Is everybody motivated? So he dresses up as a commoner. And I mean, a lot of MBA programs talk about management by walking around, business programs, undergraduate too, talk about talk about management by walking around. And the idea is that you ask the employees and get to know them and motivate them. Sam Walton did this in Walmart. And so Henry V, kind of was the inventor of it. It was probably done if you go back to ancient times too. But he does this, and he's dressed up, and people don't recognize him. And he's dressed up in a way that they won't recognize him. He's not wearing this royal outfit, and his crew. Some of them are really happy and they love him. Some of them are very unhappy and they don't trust him. And one of the things is, he's gonna pay the French a lot of money and buy himself out, and then we're all gonna get killed, and that he'll get a ransom. That was called a ransom, and we'll buy him out. He'll buy himself out, and we'll all get killed. So there were people who had like a lot of questions, and so he has to figure out how to put the recording back. The reason I turn the recording off is I don't want to violate, if I violate the copyright, and this goes over Zoom, the film goes over Zoom, then YouTube might not allow me to show it. I know it's crazy because it's from YouTube, but they do check, and I've had that problem, so that's why I turned the recording off. But you can always look up the film. It's just Henry V, starring Kenneth Branagh. It's on YouTube. That's where I got it. So yeah, Brandon, you have a question?
No, I just put my thumbs up to say that I understand.
Okay, cool. So basically, I think if you look at Henry V's speech, he's doing something a little different from Savage. Savage is kind of trying to convince people who aren't committed to the fight. In the case of Henry V, it's a little more variable, and so he's being much more supportive and charismatic than Savage is. So there is a difference there. And basically, there are other contingency theories. Another follower contingency theory is the leader participation model, which holds that leaders should participate the extent to which leadership problems require participation and share responsibility with the followers. And so, this comes up in 12 O'Clock High when Savage demotes Gately and blames him for not sharing more of the responsibility. Davenport didn't see that as an issue. Savage assumes that the fellow officers should share responsibilities for leadership. And that's related to shared leadership theory, that leadership can become an emergent state in which everyone in the group participates. And so leadership roles are distributed across followers, and the followers are capable of influencing one another. Leadership is enacted by a group or collective. And I think there's probably truth to that. I mean, you often see, like, at certain points in history, there are great leaders, and then they disappear. Like in the revolutionary stage of American history, there were a number of really great leaders. Washington, Jefferson, Hamilton, Franklin was a little older, but still, and quite a few others. And after the Revolution, these people ran things for a brief time, maybe till the 1820s, and then Monroe was kind of a transition. And then you had a totally different type of person. John Quincy Adams, the son of John Adams, was president for 4 years, and he was a very talented guy. He was actually the one that wrote the Monroe Doctrine and was innovative in foreign policy and other areas. But and Andrew Jackson was also very innovative. But what you had after Jackson was really a deterioration. I'm not saying these guys were saints, but they were certainly far more visionary than the later leaders. You know, and when he came here in the 1830s, de Tocqueville, Alexis de Tocqueville, who wrote Democracy in America, described two types of political parties, small parties and big parties. And the small parties are the ones that talk a lot and don't do much. And it's a lot like American politics now. Like there's a lot of back and forth and backbiting and all kinds of accusations and all this kind of thing. But no one really talks about the real underlying problems, or they talk about them in a delusional way. Whereas he said that there are big political parties, and these were the ones like that existed in the guise of Jefferson and Hamilton. So you had Jefferson and Hamilton arguing, one for the agrarian slave society of the South, and the other for industrialization and a free market economy without slavery. And so you had these two completely different visions, and they were, against each other. And basically one had to prevail. And it was eventually the Civil War decided that, slavery wasn't an option. And it wasn't, of course, for other reasons. But basically, these two visions, the vision of an agrarian society ruled by Americans who own small plots of land. This was Jefferson's idea. And he was against slavery overall, though he owned slaves. But his vision was an America ruled by merchant farmers, small farmers who are, I don't know, merchant is the right word, but self-employed farmers. Whereas Hamilton advocated big business and industry. And these ideas were huge. And at first it looked like Jefferson would succeed, but ultimately the dynamic of free market capitalism led inextricably to Hamilton's point of view becoming more powerful. I don't know if it was inextricable. That also might be the wrong word. I think it made it a lot easier for Hamilton's view to succeed. And it did, in the form of what later was called progressivism, which was really just a reinvention of Hamilton's view of the role of government and the rejection of Jefferson's more laissez-faire view. Jefferson's view was ultimately self-contradictory because he favored less government, but less government means that there's more economic creativity. More economic creativity means the bigger companies form, and you have huge breakthroughs in technology, and that creates mass markets, which in turn facilitates big government. So basically, Hamilton, I think just the structure of the world led to Hamilton being more successful. I think Jefferson's ideas could have succeeded, but the public didn't envision how they could, because they thought of laissez-faire as being rooted in agriculture and having small business. They didn't understand that you could have big business also with laissez-faire. So basically, some other ideas are followership theory. That followership theory focuses on the capability of followers to put a leader's vision into practice. And so the emphasis is put on the followers rather than on the leaders. And the leader has to perceive what the followers are like and then target leadership to follow the leadership style. In other words, make the leadership style follow the followers' traits. And desirable traits like industriousness, enthusiasm, and organizational citizenship behavior should be emphasized by the leader. This won't work with poor followers. So poor followers are prone to insubordination or incompetent, or overemphasizing, don't think for themselves, overemphasize conformity. And in those cases, followership theory won't work as well. So basically, what do you do? How do you lead in a time of crisis? And your book argues that leadership in a time of crisis is both charismatic and transactional. And we'll talk probably more about that next time. But charismatic leadership involves that somebody is visionary and attracts people to their leadership because they like them. Whereas transactional leadership is where you give something to somebody in exchange for following. And so in a crisis, you want a visionary leader who can justify their leadership by communicating the results, by suggesting what will benefit. And in a way, you could say Savage did this, that in other words, he was a good leader in a crisis because he basically said to them, if we're more effective, we'll survive and we'll do better at killing the opponent. And basically, I will, if you follow me, I will give you these results. So I don't think he was charismatic, by the way, but I think he did kind of give them this transaction, but I don't think he gave them a good vision. I think one place where he dramatically fails is in the lack of vision. And you don't really see a vision in 12 o'clock high until the point where he talks to Bishop. Actually, there's 2 points. One is in the very beginning when when Pritchard tells Savage he's basically being demoted. It's not really a demotion, but he's basically being demoted to go back to leading a unit. And he says to him, if the 9/18 fails, the whole show, we could lose the war. And this is a vision. All right. Your goal is to make this unit succeed so we can win the war. It's a very straightforward vision. And then the second time is when Bishop, he calls Bishop in and says to him, what are people thinking? And Bishop says, I just don't get it. I just don't understand. And he gives Bishop, he says, I don't understand why all the boys are dying. I don't get the point. And he gives Bishop an answer, which is that we're going to build an incredible Air Force, and you're going to see a solid overcast of American bombers destroying the Third Reich. But first, we have to prove ourselves now. Otherwise, that won't happen. And Bishop then goes back, and they don't show you what happens. But you might imagine that Bishop then communicates to the group, this is what he's saying. We can actually win the war for the country. And so that's the only point. And I think it's a very weak way to convey vision. Like when he had that first meeting, he should have told everyone, this is the vision. This is what we're trying to accomplish, and communicate back to them what Pritchard said to him. But he didn't do that. And I think that's part of why he had more problems than he needed to, was the lack of vision. So basically, I think Savage did some of the things that were good for leading in a crisis, but not all. All right, now I did not yet take attendance because I screwed up with something went wrong. I don't know whether it was me or the technology, but for some reason people weren't able to log in. And then when I reset the link, they were. Oh, I did take attendance. Oh, what am I saying? I did take, I forgot. Okay, I did take it.
No, you didn't, Professor.
I did not.
You didn't take attendance.
I did not. Okay. Why does it say? Okay. No, I did take attendance. Yeah, I remember everyone. I have today's the 4th. Oh, what am I talking about?
It's the 3rd today.
Yeah, I just had, but I did. You don't remember? I didn't take attendance. I really didn't. You're telling me I didn't.
No, sir, you did not.
No, you
I
didn't.
Professor.
Okay, I did.
Probably
Some,
looking at this morning's attendance. If you
okay,
have
sorry
a class
about that.
earlier.
Okay, let me do it now then. It's funny because on my attendance sheet it says 4th March, and I thought that was just the reverse of the 3rd of April. So anyway, I'll do it now. Syed Abbas, Syed Ahmad, Samima Akhtar, Alessandro Leschi.
That might be the wrong class, Professor.
Oh, that's the problem. Oh, I got it. Now I see what I did. Okay, sorry about that. That was my dumb mistake. Okay, now we're in the right place, I think. Okay, wasn't looking. Okay, now I'm in the right place for sure. Okay, sorry about that. Now I know why I got mixed up. Okay, Farhad Abdul. Farhad. Ahmed Alcor.
I'm here.
Hello, Ahmed.
Hi.
Mohammed Afi.
Hey, Professor.
Hi, Mohammed. Jenna Bell.
I'm here.
Hello, Jenna. Joseph Cananzaro.
I'm here, Professor.
Hello, sir. Jiamin Chen.
I'm here.
Hello. Janine Cola.
I'm here.
Hello. Kermia Cyrus.
I'm here, Professor.
Hello. David Esterovsky.
I'm here, Professor.
Hello, David. Marimar Garcia.
Here.
Hello. Monica Garcia.
Here.
Alexia Harrigan.
Here.
Kani Jiang.
Here.
Hello. Yusuf Khan.
Here.
Hello. Georgie Karimashvili.
Here.
Hello. Summer Lamb. Summer. Okay. Hong Jian Lin.
Here.
Hello. Hamdi Molly.
Here.
Hello. Ludley.
Here.
Hello. Famida Atwari.
Hello, Professor, I'm here.
Hello, Famida. Emmanuel Plomakis.
Here.
Hello, Raquel. Raquel Porteous. Jishan Ruan. Brendan Samuel.
Professor,
Here,
I'm here.
Professor.
Okay, I got Brendan, I got Raquel. Oh, wait, who did I call Brendan? Yeah, here you are, Brendan. Okay. So I have Raquel. Do I have Jishan Ruan? Jishan? Aaliyah, Todd.
I'm here, Professor.
Hello. Stacy Ergals.
I'm here. Good morning.
Morning. Denasia Warner.
Here.
Hello, Denasia. Jack Wu.
Here.
Hello.
No.
Yayin Zhang.
I'm here, Professor.
Hello, Yayin. Yichuan Zhang.
You,
Okay.
I
Hello.
think you might call like similar name.
What? Yichuan?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Okay, Yayin. I see Yayin Zhang. Matthew Zhao. Terrence Sander. Christian Mendez.
Good morning, Professor. I'm here.
Morning, Christian. Um, and you had emailed me, you had been there last time, but your phone didn't work or something. Christian,
Yes, yes. I had the same issue that students are having today about the Zoom links.
I wonder
I
what
was
that
waiting.
is.
I
I
was
hope
waiting
it's not an
on the meeting.
increasing.
Yeah.
You couldn't get in
Today.
last time, huh?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
nobody. Today nobody came in. I had when I it wasn't until I resent the link that people came in.
Yeah. I think there was issues with the link that you have on Blackboard. But the link that you emailed us today for the class, I successfully used to enter the Zoom class today. So I'm not sure
Is the
that was the issue.
problem if you access it from Blackboard? Is that the problem?
I think that is the problem for me. Like I'm told to log into a different email to access this Zoom invitation. But if you just email us the link like that, like what you did today, maybe that'll be helpful for everyone. That definitely
Well, I
helped me, and
do.
that solved
I've
the
been
issue from
sending.
last week.
I've been doing both the email and the Blackboard.
Okay. Well, I mean, again, just from last incident, from last week
Okay.
on
I'll tell you
Wednesday,
what.
that this worked
From
today.
now on, I'm gonna email the links rather than put them on Blackboard. So that way,
Yeah, the link worked this time, but on Blackboard it never
Okay.
works.
Thank you, Professor.
it didn't work from Blackboard. All right, there's something in Blackboard probably. That's probably the issue. Let me just finish up with attendance. Then have a nice holiday, everybody. Janaya Pratt.
Here.
Hello. Alexander Betts. I just spoke.
Here. Have a good
Jack
break.
You have a good break, Alex. Jack Shrem.
Here, Professor.
Hi, everyone. Have a nice break. Let me just call the people I did not get to, or who didn't answer, I should say. Farhad. Is Farhad here? Summer Lamb. Shan Ruan. Matthew Zhao, and Terrence Sander. Those people did not answer. Okay. Have a nice break. See you.
Enjoy your break. Have a good
Thank
one.
you. Yeah, everyone have a good time. Take care.
Hi, Professor. Do you call my name?
Yayin.
Yeah.
I called
Yeah, I'm
you.
just the connect, so I'm just double check it.
I have, yeah, I have you, don't worry.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Have a good
Welcome.
one.
You too.
Enjoy your vacation.
You too, Yayin.
Thank you.
I know.
Thank you, Professor. Have a good break as well.
Thanks,
care.
you too. Take care. Oh dear.